sports fans, Coach Nick here. Welcome to B-Ball Breakdown. Happy Memorial Day. I want to express my thanks to all the men and women who are serving in the armed forces for us. And also, we're not going to have a post-game show tonight, but we'll get right back at it tomorrow night after the Spurs versus Grizzlies Game 4. Let's talk a little bit about Game 3 of the Pacers versus the Heat, because it was very strange to me how certain things that work well in Game 2 for the Indiana, particularly with the pick and roll man, weren't happening very much at all in Game 3. It makes no sense to me. Why not run something that works until it doesn't work? Meanwhile, the Heat unpackaged their post-up game for the first time, really, and it was pretty devastating, turned the whole tenor of the game around, and if they continue to do this, they will get right to the finals and probably be hoisting another Larry O'Brien trophy. Back in Game 2, the Pacers had success with a number of different pick and rolls, mainly with Hibbert setting the screen to the inside. Notice how they've got West on the weak side high post, pulling Haslam away from the basket. Wade is late coming over and can't stop the shot. In Game 3, we have a similar setup, but this time West is in the low post on the weak side. Haslam is the one who's supposed to help, and Chalmers drops down to West. Instead, LeBron mistakenly helps one pass away, giving Stevenson the wide open three. On another similar screen and roll, Hansbrough is on the other high post. Remember, what worked was having West on the high post in the direction the screen was going. This allows his man Battier to easily pick up the roll man, then recover and defend this flailing drive to the hoop. One adjustment the defense made was to allow LeBron to float off his man much earlier to pick up the roll man. This worked wonders for the defense and even provided some Heat offense. This stemmed from the Pacers having to play Sam Young, someone LeBron had no trouble leaving completely open on the weak side. This is where having Danny Granger would significantly help the Pacers' offense. Back in Game 2, they had success running a zipper cut with Paul George, then screening him right away with Hibbert. This worked well because the Pacers would have only their point guard on the weak side, forcing the Heat's point guard to pick up 7'3" Roy Hibbert. In Game 3, they ran this play early with Hibbert slipping the screen. Notice how LeBron had not started coming off his man early yet. This forces help by Haslam and they get a layup. This time, West doesn't cut through to the other side, occupying Haslam down low. Chalmers has to rotate over and can do nothing to stop this wide open three by his man, George Hill. In the third, notice how much more physical LeBron is on Paul George, who won't even use the screen off of the zipper cut. Suddenly the offense bogs down and they turn it over. One more set that worked nicely in Game 2 is the setup of a sideline triangle on the weak side while the Pacers run an inside screen and roll with George and Hibbert. There is absolutely no help on the roll man, and Hibbert gets right to the rim with free throws. Here was one of the very few times they ran this in Game 3. The Heat adjusted by rotating quicker onto West, but Indiana gets great ball movement. However, to get a contested 22-footer from David West out of all this had to be disappointing to the Pacers coaching staff. The Spurs love to set a screen for the ball screener so the hedge would be late. Indiana hardly ever does this, but there's an example of Paul George screening for Hibbert before heading to the weak side to set the sideline triangle formation. They get the ball to Hibbert, who draws two players. Hibbert completely misses Paul George on the cut, so they get a tough shot, and West compounds the matter by pulling Battier to the ground by his neck. Let's move on to the LeBron post-ups, as the Heat offense suddenly remembered what their most effective play is. The Pacers seemed ready for it and doubled, only made the mistake of doubling off a man one pass away. On the next LeBron post-up, they leave Paul George all by himself, and there isn't much to stop LeBron from getting a layup. It wasn't like LeBron scored every single time he posted up, which might justify not doubling him in the post, but it's pretty clear to me there wasn't that much Paul George did to make him miss on this one. Suddenly, Dwayne Wade wanted in on this post-up thing since LeBron made it look so fun. Indiana adjusted by having Hibbert shadow LeBron in the post instead of doubling. Not clear why they wouldn't just double him aggressively at least once, but LeBron simply waits for Hibbert to clear the area to avoid the defensive 3-second call, and George can't stop him. On this play, it looks like Hibbert wants to come over to help on LeBron, but ends up doing very little of anything as LeBron scores another layup. It's not like the Heat were doing anything magical to prevent the double team. Look at their awful weak side spacing, and it seems easy for Paul George to run over and double while 3 guys could easily guard 4. Instead, they get away with Sam Young guarding a LeBron miss in the lane. At this point, it just got ridiculous, as Mahinmi has an opportunity to help and doesn't. Another simple spin move and an easy layup. Notice how they never tried to front the post, and when Hibbert finally does come over, it's way too late. He needs to step up and stop LeBron before he gets into the lane. Hibbert's man Hassan continues his offensive explosion on a heads-up pass by LeBron. The problem Indiana faces is that they want Hibbert in the area to help on LeBron, but the way to stop a play like this would be to deny the pass back to the top. In other words, they're screwed. Just a quick note about end of quarter clock management. After a timeout, Indiana has to figure they're going to run a play for Ray Allen, especially with David West guarding him. Sure enough, a typical set with 2 screens along the baseline. West expects Young to switch with him, but that doesn't happen and Allen gets a 3. This should now be the last shot of the half after an Indiana timeout to set up a play. It appears their plan was to just throw it to West in the high post, but West doesn't call for the ball and George stands there for a few seconds waiting. When they finally turn it into a pick and roll, it's too early to attack, and even though he gets free throws, it gives the Heat a lot of time to attack on their end, and attack LeBron James does with very little resistance. This shouldn't happen in an Eastern Conference Finals game. So there you have it, sports fans. I envision Indiana being able to set a sideline screen and roll and then have Hibbert slip to the post, because the way the Heat like to defend that is they'll come up high on the hedge and they're going to have to rotate a small guy onto Hibbert. He should get a nice post up out of that. So we'll see if they can adjust to doing that and then also get back to hitting the roll man a lot more with the right spacing, the right personnel. I want to see a lot more George Hill and Roy Hibbert pick and rolls. I just don't understand why they completely go away from that. Now the Heat, on the other hand, have run 3 different kind of offensive systems in 3 games. It's schizophrenic, it's all over the place, and maybe Spoelstra is some sort of mad genius that knew he was going to wait until game 3 to turn the whole series around. I have no idea, because who this hurts are all the role players. By switching all these sets so much, it doesn't surprise me that guys like Battier and Ray Allen are having so much trouble, and Cole and Chalmers. It's the role players that rely on the structure to get them good shots, and they know from game to game where they're coming from. But when you switch it up like this so much, they didn't run horns once in game 3. It's like you switch it up that much, it makes it very difficult for the role players to contribute. And luckily for the Heat, they're playing against the Indiana team that doesn't score very well no matter what happens. And even though they scored well in the very beginning against the Heat, it was a shocker. But the second half, they couldn't get the ball to go in the basket. So this series is probably going to be over, particularly if the Heat remember to continue to post up LeBron James. It's devastating down there for them. Well, thanks for joining us. Don't miss our post-game show tomorrow night, and I'll be on ESPN Radio tomorrow night as well after our post-game show. And don't forget, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?